I got an internship because I thought I'd get to work around actual evidence. No detective stuff, obviously. I wasn't expecting to solve murders or anything. But I was a criminal justice major, and the posting mentioned assisting the records division with archive case materials, so in my head, I pictured evidence lockers and old case files and all that. First day there, they immediately told us interns weren't allowed anywhere near physical evidence. Chain of custody issues, liability, whatever. So instead, they stuck me in the records annex, helping digitize old files. Basically, scanning paperwork for 4 hours a day. The annex wasn't even connected to the main station. It was this older building a few blocks away, with a basement archive underneath it. My shift was from 4 to 8. Apparently, it was easier having interns work evenings because the records department was less busy by then. I actually didn't mind it at first. The work can be repetitive, but it was easy. Take the file down, scan it, rename it, load it into the system, and move on to the next one. But sometimes you'd come across an old case and ended up reading half the file before realizing you still have work to do. Everyone did it. Even the older employees admitted it. There was this deli across the street. I used to grab food from them during break because, well, it was cheap. Most nights followed the exact same routine. Clock in, scan files, go upstairs for food around 6, come back down, and finish my shift. That was pretty much my entire summer. I remember seeing the woman before I ever saw the case file. At that time, it didn't mean anything. She was sitting in the lobby outside the elevators when I came in one afternoon. Maybe late 20s, dark hair, gray coat, even though it was hot outside. I only really noticed her because the building was usually empty around that time. She was just sitting there, looking down at something in her hands. I remember thinking maybe she was just waiting for someone upstairs. I took the elevator down to the archives and forgot about her completely. A few days later, I came in and there was a box sitting on my desk. No archive sticker, no intake form attached. Just a cardboard records box with a case number written on the side. I honestly thought somebody left me extra work, but nobody mentioned it. I even asked one of the records clerk if they needed the file scanned that night, and she just looked confused and said she didn't know what the box I was talking about. So eventually curiosity got the better of me and I opened it. Missing persons case, 2001. Woman disappeared after leaving work a few towns away. Her car was found in the parking lot 2 days later. Her purse was still inside, key still in the ignition. No signs of a struggle. I flipped through the paperwork for maybe 10 minutes before I stopped at the case photo. I immediately recognized her. It was the same woman from the lobby upstairs. Same face. She's even wearing the same exact gray coat. I got up from my desk and went back upstairs to check if she was still there. The lobby was empty. I stood there for a second, trying to convince myself it was just somebody that looked similar. The case was from 2001. There's just no way. I went back downstairs and kept reading the file. The case itself wasn't even that unusual. No suspects, no ransom calls, just a woman disappearing on her way home from work. But I got weirdly invested in it. I started reading through the witness statements instead of working. There were pages in there from people claiming they saw her after she disappeared. At grocery stores, bus stops, parking lots. Most of the reports were written off pretty quickly. Around 6, I went upstairs to grab food from the deli like usual. And when I got near the entrance, I saw her again. She was pushing through the deli door heading outside. Same gray coat. I froze. This time I knew it was her. I followed her outside without even thinking about it. By the time I got across the street, she was already halfway down the block, just walking normally with everyone else. I started moving faster, trying not to lose sight of her. Then a city bus pulled between us. When it moved again, she was gone. Like I lost her in the crowd somewhere. That whole event was so frustrating. She was already there. I couldn't catch up to her. So I went back and tried finishing my actual work. But I couldn't stop thinking about that case. I ended up taking the box home that night. I know that sounds insane now, but nobody ever asked about it. Nobody signed it in, nothing. Part of me thought maybe somebody forgot it there. And another part of me just really wanted to keep reading. So I took it. Over the next week, I started noticing her more. Never being able to get hold of her. Always somewhere ahead of me. Once outside the train station. Another time crossing through a parking garage while I was leaving work. Every time I see or notice her, I just feel like chasing after her. But I never really got close. The traffic light changing, crowd moving between us, somebody stopping me to ask something. Nothing out of the ordinary, just enough to distract me. And by the time I notice, she'd already be farther away again. What started bothering me was that she never looked different. She has the same face from the file. I'm guessing the same age. Like she stopped aging for some reason. I actually went back through the original paperwork one night, just to make sure I wasn't losing my mind about the dates. 2001. The woman should have been almost 50 by now. But every time I saw her, she looked exactly like the photo from the file. I brought the box back to archives and left it on my desk, exactly where I first found it. Nobody said anything. No one asked where it came from. No one asked why it disappeared for almost a week. At that point, I didn't even want answers anymore. I just wanted that thing out of my apartment. That night, I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone before sleeping, when I noticed a picture I really don't recognize. I don't have any memory of taking it. There was no location attached, just that one photo. The missing woman was standing close to the camera, looking directly into it, with a blank expression. I remember staring at it for a long time, before noticing part of somebody's arm at the bottom corner of the frame. Gray hoodie sleeve, black watch. The exact same thing I wear to work every day. If you're enjoying the story so far, consider subscribing. I've got plenty more where these came from. Now, on to the next one. I've worked front desk at a roadside motel for a little over 2 years now. It's not a kind of job nobody actually wants to keep doing. After a while, I see the same stuff over and over again. Noise complaints, lost key cards, guess who had a little too much to drink. The pay sucks. Overnight shift sucks even worse. But it paid my bills, so I tried to do the job right at least. I work evenings most of the time, usually from 6 at night until a little after sunrise. The motel sat right off the interstate, so during summer, we stayed pretty busy. Families passing through, truckers, people trying to save money instead of staying at hotels closer to the city. The place itself wasn't huge. 2 floors, around 16 rooms in total. The lobby is up front. Ice machine near the stairs. Vending machines outside by the laundry room that barely worked. I also did those complimentary breakfasts in the morning. Mostly just the cheap stuff. Muffins, cereals, packets of oatmeal, tiny yogurt cups. Management was cheap as hell when it comes to restocking supplies. I stole food from there sometimes. After 2 years on the job, I knew exactly where everything was kept. Extra granola bars, crackers, noodles I kept hidden under the desk. I started doing that after one of my paychecks bounced the year before. Never really stopped after that. The guy came in a little after midnight. I remember because I was halfway through eating one of those blueberry muffins from the breakfast area when I saw his car pull into the lot. The man who came through the lobby doors looked exhausted. He didn't look drunk, not high either. Just exhausted in a way that honestly made me feel bad for him. His clothes looked damp with sweat, and he kept glancing back outside through the glass doors while I checked him in. I asked how many nights he needed. She just said, hopefully one. I remember laughing a little, because I thought he was joking. He didn't laugh back. When I asked what room he wanted, he actually leaned over the counter to look at the motel map beside the register. Then he pointed to the room all the way to the far end of the second floor. Farthest room from the stairs. Is that one open? I told him yes. He nodded immediately. Good. That was probably the first moment something about him started feeling odd. He doesn't seem dangerous. There's just something about him that makes everyone around him feel nervous too. Just being around him made me anxious. I scanned his ID, ran his card, programmed the key. Pretty normal interaction overall. Before leaving, he stopped and asked, "Do people stay awake here late?" I remember shrugging and saying, "Depends on who checks in." He looked toward the parking lot again after that, then quietly said, "That's not really what I meant." I watched him walk upstairs, carrying one duffel bag, and disappear down the walkway. That should have been the end of it. Around 1 in the morning, one of the vending machines got broken into. I found glass scattered all over the concrete outside. Most of the chips and snacks were already gone. At first, I figured some drunk guests did it. Wouldn't have been the first time that month. But while I was cleaning up, this older woman staying in room 8 came outside yelling about breakfast. She wasn't asking, she was yelling, wanting to know why we didn't restock breakfast. I just stared at her for a second because breakfast wasn't until 6. She kept going on about how hungry she was. Like genuinely angry about it. I ended up giving her 2 granola bars from behind the desk just to calm her down. About 20 minutes later, another guest came in, asking if there was anywhere nearby still serving food. Then somebody else asked. Then another. By around 2 in the morning, the whole lobby smelled like instant noodles. Everybody seemed irritated. Not the normal kind I often see working here. People kept walking in circles outside their rooms, going back inside, coming back out again a few minutes later. A guy from room 3 started arguing with his wife because she ate a bag of chips without him. I could hear them screaming at each other through the lobby walls. At some point, I realized I'd eaten almost everything I had hidden under the desk already. But I'm still hungry. My stomach felt empty again right after eating. Like that painful hollow feeling when you skip meals for an entire day. The weirdest part was the ice. People kept taking ice, constantly. I'd hear the machine dumping fresh ice every few minutes, all night. One time, I walked outside and saw a guy from upstairs chewing ice straight from the bucket while standing there in his socks. He looked embarrassed when he noticed me watching. Didn't even say anything. Just walked back to his room, still chewing the ice. Around 3, I finally went upstairs to check on the guy in the far room. I couldn't shake the feeling that things had started changing after he checked in. I knocked once. No answer. Then I heard his voice from the other side. You should go downstairs. I asked if he was all right. There was a long pause after that. Then he said, "It gets bad around this time." Like, that was supposed to mean something to me. Instead, he just asked, "Do you have food hidden somewhere?" It caught me completely off guard. I didn't answer. I guess he thought I said yes. You should keep it close to you. I just stood there in front of his door for a few seconds, trying to figure out what the hell he was talking about. Then I heard shouting downstairs. The couple from room 3 started screaming again. Only this time, it sounded way worse. Furniture slamming around, glass breaking. Then, suddenly quiet. Not long after that, a woman came running up their room, crying, saying her husband bit her hand while they were eating. Actually bit her. Nobody seemed to know what to do with that. A grown man biting his wife over food? The woman kept crying. There was blood all over her hand. I remember looking around, waiting for somebody to say it was insane. Nobody did. After that incident, people stopped pretending everything was normal. guests kept coming out of their rooms, walking around the parking lot, arguing with one another, looking through their cars for anything they could eat. One guy grabbed a tire iron out of his trunk and started trying to pry open the second vending machine. I remember sitting behind the desk, eating my crackers, straight from the package while watching all of it happen through the lobby windows. I know how bad that sounds, but by then, I didn't even care anymore. I was hungry. At one point, I caught myself wondering which room still had food inside. Not who was inside them. I was worried about food. That scared me more than anything I'd seen all night. Because at that moment, all I can think about was just to satisfy my hunger. I don't remember much after that. Just bits and pieces. People wandering around the parking lot. Doors opening and closing. Arguments starting and just stopping. Every now and then, somebody would come into the lobby, asking if we had any food left. The answer was always no. By the time the sun started coming up, most of the noise had died down. People just seemed exhausted. Like whatever had been driving them all night had finally started burning itself out. I started feeling a little more like myself. The hunger was still there, but my mind was a bit clearer. I had been hiding behind the front desk throughout the whole thing. And that's when it hit me. I haven't checked on any of the guests. Not once. So I grabbed my master key and went outside. The first room I checked was Dave's, room 7, a truck driver. He stayed with us a few times before. Easy guy to talk to. I knocked a couple of times, but no answer. I remember thinking probably he was just asleep. Hell, I was hoping he was. I opened the door. Dave was dead. A few hours earlier, we'd been talking in the lobby. Now he's just gone. I checked a few more rooms after that. I was hoping Dave was some kind of exception. That maybe he had a heart attack. Maybe something else happened. Some reason. Then I opened the next door. And the next. By the third room, I knew it wasn't just Dave. People had turned on each other. That was the only way I could make sense of it. One room looked like somebody had fought over a bag of chips. Another still had food sitting on the table. Nobody had touched it. There was blood all over the floor instead. The family from room 4 was gone. Their suitcases were still there. The little girl's backpack was still sitting on the bed. The older woman from room 8 never made it out of her room. And the couple from room 3. I don't know what happened to the husband, but his wife wasn't in the room anymore. The further I got, the harder it became to tell who was dead and who just disappeared. I remember standing outside one of the rooms, trying to figure out where everyone was. There were 11 occupied rooms that night. By sunrise, I was the only one walking around. Then I thought about the guy at the far end of the building. I went there expecting, I don't know, something. And an explanation maybe. His room was empty. The duffel bag was gone and his car was gone too. everything finally started making sense. About that guest. The way he kept checking the time. The way he kept looking over his shoulder. The way he asked if people stayed awake late. I spent the whole night thinking he was scared. But then I wasn't so sure. Because none of what happened that night seemed to surprise him. Not the hunger, the fighting, not any of it. I think I'd seen it before. Maybe not there. Maybe not our motel, but somewhere. I'm not really the type to go out much, but about a year ago, some of my friends convinced me to try a downhill kart place built into the side of the mountain. The place was about an hour outside the city. During summer, it got packed. Groups of friends everywhere filming videos, yelling over each other, talking about how they almost crashed. Once I saw how high the track went, I almost backed out completely. I was watching people zoom around corners, thinking maybe I'd made a mistake. You could hear people screaming from the track before we even got to the ticket booth. The staff gave everyone helmets and pads before sending everyone up. The first run was great. Way more fun than I expected. The carts picked up enough speed to keep things interesting without feeling out of control. By the time we reached the bottom, I already talked myself into going again. The second run felt faster. I came into one of the turns too fast and I tried correcting it at the last second. The cart fishtailed. I clipped the guardrail. At first it was just dirt, branches, and the sound of metal scraping. Then the tree. I don't remember much after that. When I woke up, my leg hurt pretty bad. Every breath felt sharp too, like somebody drove a knife between my ribs. For a while, I just sat there, trying to get my bearings. The woods were quiet. No staff, no people, no sounds from the track. I yelled a few times. Nobody answered. Eventually, I managed to get on my feet. I figured that if I kept going, I'd run into somebody else. Instead, I found a wristband. The same one they gave everyone. It was hanging from a branch. I didn't think much of it. Somebody probably just lost it. Then I found another one. A different color. It looks old. Then another. And another. When I saw the fifth one, I stopped walking completely. Because what are the odds that 5 of them ended up in the same place? Somebody put them there. I was still staring at one of them when I heard footsteps behind me. There was a man standing maybe 20 feet away, holding a rock. He looked dirty and exhausted. Neither of us said anything. Then he looked down at my wrist. I still had my wristband on. He stared at it for a second. Then he lowered the rock. Then asked, "How long you been here?" I told him maybe an hour, maybe 2, I wasn't sure. He stared at me for a few seconds, then laughed. Then he pointed at my wrist and said, "Keep your wristband close." I asked him why. He just shook his head. "Just do it." We ended up walking together for the rest of the day. Or what I think was the rest of the day. His name was Ryan. At least that's what he told me. He never answered questions directly. Every time I asked her where we were, he'd just say, wrong question. And every time I asked him how to leave this place, he'd just say, that's the question everyone has. The only useful thing he told me was that there were other people out there, groups scattered around. I asked him what happened to them. He didn't answer. That night, we stopped near a fallen tree. I woke up sometime later because Ryan was standing and staring into the woods. I asked him what he was looking at. He didn't answer. I asked again. Nothing. Then he quietly said, oh, like he recognized something out there. Then he started walking. I got up and followed him, called his name, told him to stop. He never even looked back. I followed him between the trees for maybe a minute before I lost sight of him. That was the last time I ever spoke to Ryan. The next morning, I found his wristband hanging from a branch. The day later, I found the trees. Hundreds of wristbands, maybe thousands, wrapped around branches, tied to trunks, hanging. Different colors and designs. Some looked like decades old. That was where I met the collector. That's just what I called him. The guy had wristbands tied around both arms, more hanging from his backpack. Dozens of them. I asked him why he carried them. He looked down at them for a second and said, somebody should remember them. Before leaving, he pointed me toward the camp, said there were people there. Then he told me not to stay out after dark. I asked why. He just walked away. That camp was the first good thing that happened to me since the crash. There were 8 people, including me. Different ages, different backgrounds. Some had there been for weeks, some months. One guy claimed he'd been there for years, and I can tell. For the first time since waking up in these woods, I felt safe. Then night came, and I saw them. Dozens of them, standing between the trees. 20, maybe 30. Hard to tell. They never moved, never spoke. Just stood there watching the camp. I asked who they were. Nobody answered. Eventually, Eden looked up from the fire and said, people. Then she went back to staring into the flames. Nobody wanted to talk about it, which made it worse. Weeks passed, maybe months. It's hard to tell out here. People still arrive sometimes. New faces, new wristbands. Nobody ever stayed along for long. Eventually, they'd find a camp or disappear. The first person from our group vanished about 3 months after I arrived. His name was Eric. One morning, he was just gone. Nobody searched. No one panicked. Nobody even looked surprised. That pissed me off. Asking why nobody was doing anything. Then one of the older survivors just said, we already know where he went. I found out what he meant a few days later. Eric was standing among the watchers, just standing there. I called his name. He never moved. It kept happening. One by one, people disappeared. Always watching. Never speaking. Nobody knew why. Nobody knew how. Anybody who claimed they understood was clearly lying. The only thing everybody agreed on was the wristbands. Keep them close. Never throw them away. Never leave them behind. No one knows about that either. But when you've been trapped long enough, you stop ignoring advice. Even if that advice can't be explained. It's been about a year now, I think. Eden used to count the days, but she stopped a long time ago. There are only 3 of us left. We started with 8. The others are still here though. I can see them from where I'm sitting. Standing behind the trees. Watching the camp. I started writing this down because I was afraid. Afraid to forget who I am. The people in the trees used to have names, friends, and family. Now they just stand there. And every time I look at them, I wonder how much time I still have left. The worst part is, I still recognize some of them. Eric, Eden, a guy named Marcus who used to tell the same jokes every single night. They're all still out there. There are more of them now than when I first arrived. A lot more. I stopped counting after 50. I think that's why I started writing all of this down. Not because it will help. I don't think so. I just don't want to forget. The mountain, my friends, the crash, even my own name. Little things like that. The kind of things that people in the trees probably used to remember too. I can see them tonight. Same as every night. Standing out there in the dark, waiting. And lately I've noticed something that scares me more than they do. When I look into the trees now, I don't see strangers anymore. But I see myself there, standing as well.